I call this meeting of the West Dallas West Milwaukee School Board to order. Mr. Talani, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And Sarah, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Lee,
Here.
Mr. Becker,
Here.
Mr. Talani,
Here.
Mr. Keller is excused. Ms. Deal,
Here.
Ms. Carr,
Here.
Mr. Verbos,
Here.
Ms. Lee is excused. President Burns.
Present. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Are there any modifications to the agenda tonight?
There are no modifications.
All right, then at this time, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as printed.
Move to adopt the agenda as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other modifications? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we will adopt that agenda then. And so then at this time, that brings us to Dr. Robinson's report. So go ahead and take it away, sir.
Good evening, President Burns, members of the board, colleagues, families, and members of our community. Before providing my superintendent's report this evening, I wanted to provide a formal and public response to our parents, community members that have come to provide public comments at consecutive meetings concerning the mental health programs and supports for students in our district. I want to begin by acknowledging something that weighs heavily on all of us. In June, our school community experienced a heartbreaking loss of one of our students, Sage. There are no words that can adequately express the pain of that loss. To the students, family, friends, classmates, teachers, and all of those who loved and cared for this young person, I want you to know that our hearts remain with you. We grieve with you, we stand with you, and we recognize that the impact of such a loss extends far beyond one family. It touches classmates, educators, staff members, and our entire community. As a school district, we have a responsibility to do more than respond when crisis occurs. We must work every day to create schools where students feel safe, connected, valued, and supported, and where we're asking for help is viewed as a sign of strength, not weakness. I want our community to know that the West Dallas West Milwaukee School District takes our students' mental health and well-being seriously. We have built a multi-layered system of supports that includes prevention, early identification, intervention, counseling, student leadership, family engagement, and partnerships with organizations in our community. In the district, we have committed to moving away from specific ratio factors for hiring, but instead have analyzed the individual needs for school demographics and determined supports. Dedicated support tailored to school needs, providing one counselor / social worker per elementary school and a minimum of 2 in secondary schools. Our work includes individual counseling through school counselors and social workers, school-based therapy and referrals to community providers in coordination with outside mental health professionals and crisis services. We use tools such as My Sabres Universal Mental Health Screener to identify students who may need additional support. We also utilize Gaggle monitoring to help identify potential concerns that require school and law enforcement welfare follow-ups. Our students have access to supports such as check-in, check-out, interventions, sensory spaces, designated break areas, coping strategies, and other resources designed to help students regulate, recover, and return to learning. We also recognize the power of students supporting students. Our Hope Squad program provides peer-to-peer suicide prevention education, teaches students to recognize concerns and report them to trusted adults, and helps build greater awareness of mental health throughout our school communities. Hope Week provides an opportunity to bring that message of hope, connection, and help seeking to an even broader audience. Students also have the opportunities to find a sense of belonging and connection through organizations and activities such as GSA, student leadership groups, crew activities, focus groups, and other student-led initiatives. We provide prevention and social emotional supports through programs such as Second Step, mindfulness programming, restorative practices, trauma-informed approaches, and relationship building efforts that help students identify trusted adults. Our schools also partner with organizations such as the National Alliance of Mental Health, Southwest Suburban Health Department, Rogers Behavioral Health, Professional Services Group, Milwaukee County Crisis Intervention Services, and other community partners to expand the resources available to our students and families. Provide anonymous reporting through Speak Up, Speak Out, safety planning when concerns arise, bullying and harassment procedures, and multiple avenues for students, families, and staff to raise concerns. Lastly, last school year, we updated the student identification cards on the back, which states help is on the way, along with the number to the suicide hotline. Not going through. These efforts matter, but I also want to be clear tonight. Having programs is not the same as having impact. Our responsibility is to ask ourselves continually, are students aware of the supports available to them? Do they trust the adults in our schools enough to ask for help? Are we identifying students early enough? Are families receiving the support and information they need? Are we reaching the students who are most difficult to reach? And are we using what we learn to improve our systems? The loss of a student should never be reduced to a program, a policy, or a statistic. Every student is a child, a family member, a friend, a classmate, and a valued member of our community. So as we move forward, I believe we must continue to examine how we strengthen our work. A student and family survey on awareness and accessibility of mental health supports is an idea that will be integrated this year. School-by-school review of counseling and social work capacity as well. A review of suicide prevention and post-prevention protocols. A trusted adult initiative ensuring every student can identify at least one adult in their school. A clear district-wide mental health resource guide for families. Expanded professional learning for staff in suicide prevention, trauma-informed practices, and mental health first aid. A formal student mental health advisory group to provide ongoing feedback to district leadership. Will all be led by our Director of Student Services, Teresa Moritek. We cannot promise that we will be able to prevent every tragedy, but we can promise we will never stop working to build a culture where students know they matter, that someone is listening, and that help is available. We will continue to provide a school district where every student feels seen, supported, connected, and valued. And we will continue to honor the memory of the student, Zage, we lost, not simply through words, but through our actions and our commitment to the well-being of every student in the West Allis, West Milwaukee School District. Our students deserve nothing less. Before I continue with my report, I want to turn it over to President Burns, see if you have any follow-up comments.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. So actually what I would like to do is I'd like to open it for any of the board members to make a statement if they would like to both reflect on or comment on where we are as a district with our mental health capacities and the things that we're doing. So if you have a moment and would like to make a statement, feel free, let me know. Yeah, one of them.
For one, thank you, Dr. Robinson. It's a pretty comprehensive list of things, great programs and stuff and resources. And I think that making sure that is all made available and that everybody's aware of it is critically important. I want to start also by expressing my appreciation and sympathy for everyone that has spoken here on behalf of Zage. I think that speaking up is during a difficult time like this isn't easy and it deserves admiration. And I know how it feels to go through. So I've been through the exact same situation in my life. In late 2019, after a struggle with bipolar disorder, my nephew died by suicide. His name was Josh. He was a graduate from West Allis Central. Raising awareness for mental health support is a huge undertaking, and it takes a village. It's not just one avenue. And our entire community has to work together to properly support the needs of these people and prevent these outcomes. A quote that I heard that has given me great comfort, though I don't exactly remember who said it, or I don't know the specific wording. It essentially says that everyone dies twice, once when their heart stops and once more the last time that their name is spoken. That's why I still talk about Josh all the time, and that's why it's important that we never stop talking about Zage. My deepest condolences to his family and his friends and everybody that knew him. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Verbose. Is there anyone else that would like to make a statement? Okay. I think from my part, I think all of this was covered as far as what we are doing, what we're going to continue doing, and what we're going to hopefully improve upon. I think the one thing that I would say is that this is a community issue. And so looking to the community, even with our programs and talking about the questions that we ask ourselves continually, I don't think these need to be limited to students. These should be about your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. Ask those questions, see if they know where they can go if they need it, and reach out, ask for help when anyone needs it. So this is very important to all of us. As Dr. Robinson said, this is family, this is student, this is our community. So wherever we can help and wherever we can help one another, I think we should reach out and make sure that we're doing the best that we can. So with that, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, President Burns. I'm going to go ahead and continue my report this time. Hoover donation. As Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian Church concludes its 100 years of ministry in the West Allis community, the congregation has chosen Hoover Elementary School as the recipient of a closing donation. Church leadership shared that they wanted to invest in the organizations that reflect their mission and values. They expressed confidence that Hoover School will continue serving as a beacon of hope and support for students and families in the West Allis and surrounding communities. The congregation will merge with Forest Park Presbyterian Church in New Berlin. We have Principal Vang here. You want to come on up and tell us all about the donation and what it's been designated for?
There you go. Thank you. Yes. So I wanted to read a little thank you note that I wrote on behalf of the staff, students, and families to thank Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian Church for their closing donation. So on behalf of the students, families, and staff at Hoover Elementary, I want to extend our deepest gratitude to the congregation of Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian Church for their extraordinary generosity. For many years, the church has quietly and faithfully supported Hoover students and families, often providing assistance when it was needed most. Through their partnership, you have helped remove barriers for children and ensured that more of our students could finally participate in the opportunities that make elementary school such a meaningful experience. As Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian begins the next chapter and prepares to merge with another congregation, we are deeply honored that they have chosen to invest in Hoover one final time through this remarkable gift of $20,000. While we are saddened to see their chapter in our community come to a close, their legacy of generosity and service will continue to have a lasting impact on the students at Hoover for years to come. This donation will directly support student-facing opportunities that enrich the educational experience for all children. Their gift will open doors that might otherwise not be available. Specifically, they ask that the donation be used towards field trips, clubs, supporting students in before and after action care, and supporting students with musical instrument repair fees and usage fees. At Hoover, we believe that every student deserves meaningful opportunities to learn, belong, and thrive. And the generosity of the church will not only create memories, but inspire new passions and provide opportunities for students. It also demonstrates what is possible when a community comes together to invest in its children. So thank you for your partnership and a legacy that will last well beyond today. Warmly, Courtney Vang, Principal, and the students and staff at Hoover Elementary. Thank you.
We are reminded that life is full of seasons, and as one season closes with the Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian Church concluding their services, the door is opening up to a different season as Hoover, then the students are able to benefit from their generosity. So I will personally try to get out. When are they officially closing down? Okay. I may go and try to have a couple of comments and thank them at one of their services too. Okay. Thank you so much. Lastly, at this meeting, we have our crime statistics reporting. That is a requirement from DPI. 2023 Wisconsin Act 12 creates the Wisconsin Statute Section 118.124, which requires Wisconsin schools that operate high school grades defined as grades 9 through 12 to annually report certain criminal incidents. Specifically, covered schools are required to collect and maintain certain statistics of incidents involving various crimes specified by the Act. If you recall, board members, this was accompanied the report card last year. We had a couple of discrepancies, and we worked with DPI to make sure that we were reporting it in the correct way. I think we actually kind of way over-reported according to DPI last year, so we will see more norming compared to the rest of the state. And so I'm gonna. It's Marla. Where is she? Yeah. So I'm asking Marla to come, and if she has any additional comments to make concerning this report, she can do that. And if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, you can also do that. It's fine.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Hello, board. I mean, the reporting was within the requirements of the guidance that was provided by DPI. And I mean, there's some areas that were an increase and some areas that were a decrease. I think it's always a work in progress and we can always do better. But this is what we have for this past year. And I think the numbers reflect accurately. So any questions in regards to that? Yes, sir.
Mr. Lee.
Just quick question. Is this list indicating every instance, or could one incident actually encompass multiple of these criminal and or municipal infractions?
This is all encompassing of the secondary, I should say, the high schools. So this includes Hale, Central, and Docky.
So I guess what I'm asking is if there was an incident in which someone had a controlled substance and then tried to flee because of that, would you be looking at a controlled substance only and or disorderly conduct only, or is both? So could it be 2 tickets for one incident?
It falls within the parameters of a few things. It's got to happen on school grounds. It is either adult and juvenile. So if it's within those parameters and it goes, like if disorderly conduct would be local as a requirement, but disorderly conduct state would not be a requirement for reporting.
I guess you're saying could one situation count multiple times? That's his question.
Say what? One more.
One fight, but 3 kids ran out. All 3 got tickets.
Yep, that was right. So it's not per incident, it's per individual.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get to. And you said it's adults and students, so it isn't necessarily all from students. There could be adults.
Correct.
Whether staff or just parents or other people who are essentially, if it's happened on school grounds, it's reported.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. All right. Thank you.
This concludes my report.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. All right, and that will take us to item number 7, our public comments. So at this time, if anyone would like to address the board, you may sign up in the back of the room or in the Zoom link in the chat. Please introduce yourself with your name and address. You have 3 minutes to provide comments. The board cannot discuss, debate, or act upon any item addressed during the public comments portion of the school board meeting. Follow-up may be provided by the superintendent at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Also, when you come up, please make sure that the light on the mic is green. That will indicate that it's on, and it should be all set up at this time. So on the list at this time, I see it's Mark Klobukowski.
Hello, Dr. Robinson and fellow esteemed school board members. My name is Mark Klobakowski. I'm a resident of the school district for quite a few years. I graduated from from West Milwaukee High School. I ended up working in our Department of Recreation as a full-time instructor right out of school. I eventually rolled over and became a FIA teacher, so I was in the teaching part and the recreation part for 36 years. So been around a little while, and I know a few things. And recently, it's been brought to our attention at West South Central about the purpose of building or reconstructing the track at Frank Lloyd Wright. And we have our head coach here, and I know he's going to address the track benefits of this, but I'm going to come in as the community part as quick as I can here. First of all, I just want you all to know that I'm an addict, okay? But I'm an exercise addict, okay? I have to work out every day. That's just the way I'm built and things like that. And doing that, living in West Dallas, I have run every street, I'm a big runner, or I was a big runner until my hips went out because I have hip replacements. But anyway, being a big runner, I've experimented or experienced a lot of things that weren't good. I was hit by a car once. Dogs are not my favorite when they're chasing me, and that's happened several times. So it's probably not the best to run out there, but I don't mind. I chose to do that and that. But when I had an opportunity, I would go over to Frank Lloyd Wright when I wanted to put on some mileage where I knew that I was counting my laps because I knew it was going to be a quarter mile. West Dallas Hale is a great place to work out, but unfortunately, because it's locked up because of obviously security reasons and things like that, Frank Lloyd Wright was the only option. I can't say how many times I've been to Frank Lloyd Wright. I can't even tell you how many head count was there. But when I would visit that track, there was always people on there. It didn't matter if I worked out at 9 o'clock at night or I worked out at 8, 7 in the morning. There was always people on there. And I'm not saying it was crowded, but there was other people that were using that facility. I lost my train of thought. But anyway, that being just having that track in our community was vital. It was vital for us. And a few things that I kind of just want to jot down or share with you real quick is, I mean, having a track there, and again, from the community aspect, it promotes public health. We have a place where people can come in and, if we just want to have a walk-through gate because so you don't have cars, that will go through it, because I know there's a gate that you can get in there and stuff like that for safety. It's a great gathering place. I can work out there. I don't have to worry about cars or dogs. That's always kind of a plus too. And I hear you're going to be going or possibly going into a rubberized track because right now it's an asphalt. Am I done? Okay. Well, I guess that's it. Okay. Well, I hope you got my point. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. And then next up, we have Dave Jesse. All right. Bailey Leonard.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. As a coach, I want to share what this project would mean for
Ms.
our student
Leonard.
athletes.
Your name and address first.
Oh,
please.
yes, sorry. Bailey Leonard. Live in West Dallas, went to school at Central actually, so speaking as not only a coach, but an alumni. So I want to share what this project would mean for our student athletes. Right now, our team has to travel to our shared complex at Hale to use their space for outdoor practices. While we're very grateful to have access to that facility, transportation, for one, has been a constant challenge. So when buses aren't available or schedules change, we lose our valuable practice time. Sometimes athletes may have to wait, or we have to shorten our practice, or our coaches have to adjust plans because of transportation rather than what's best for our student athletes. So having a track within walking distance or running distance would make a tremendous difference. So instead of relying on buses, our athletes could walk or jog over to practice. That gives us more time to train, prepare for meets, and support student success. It would also reduce transportation demands on the district while providing students with a safe and reliable place to practice. But it wouldn't just benefit our high school team, A community track would be a place for youth sports, walking groups, runners, families, and residents of all ages to stay active. It would be a facility the entire community could enjoy and take pride in. This project is an investment in our students, our community, and the future of our athletics in our district. So I hope you'll consider the long-term benefits. Thank you for your time.
All right. And then next up, we would have Katie Gast.
Hi, Katie Ast, 2031 South 86th Street, West Dallas. I'm back again, sorry. So good evening, school board members. I'm here tonight to respectfully ask that the board ensure that all parents and guardians of students at Franklin Elementary and Central High School are notified about the proposed warming shelter at Mount Hope Lutheran Church before any decision is made. While I know you don't get a vote, you do have a voice, and part of that voice is letting the families know about this proposal. I did speak about that the last meeting, so some of you that weren't here, my apologies. This proposal is of significant interest to many families because of its proximity to schools. Most families have not even been made aware of this proposal. Regardless of where individuals stand on the proposal itself, parents, guardians deserve the opportunity to be informed and to understand how it could affect the surrounding schools' communities. Transparent communication builds trust and allows families to participate in the public process in a meaningful way. Providing timely notification before the proposal moves forward ensures that parents and guardians have the chance to ask questions, express concerns, and stay engaged in decisions that may impact their children and their schools. I respectfully ask the board to prioritize notifying all the families of Franklin Elementary and Central High School before the proposal is considered final. It's expected to come for a vote at the church on August 9th, and then we'll move to the West Dallas Common Council. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right. And then we have Cindy Radke.
Good evening. My name's Cindy Radke, 8519 West Beecher. I also am here about the warming center that they proposed for Mount Hope. What I'm finding out, never did I expect to be in front of a school board. My kids graduated many years ago. But what I'm finding out is most of the people don't even know about this that live in the neighborhood. There were letters sent to a few people in the area, but that was it. I understand you as the school board do not get a vote, but I do feel that you are the voices for our families and our kids of West Dallas. I understand Common Council does get the vote, and I hope that you can at least reflect what the people of West Dallas feel. Everyone I've talked to so far is against it. I've tried to get people to come, but most of them, it's summer and they're busy, and I can understand that. Schools are drug-free zones, they're a safe zone. Putting a warming house, a warming shelter by two schools within a kitty corner and less than a block away is not the right location. That's all I can say to you. They need it, but they need a different location. This is not the right location for a place like this in our school district. Thank you.
All right. And then that will bring us to Dave Jesse.
Good evening. Dave Jesse, 2125 South 66th. Head track coach over at West Dallas Central, head cross country coach as well. Touch base on what Bailey and Coach K have both said before. Coach K touched on it. I actually run more than him. A little bit. Obviously. But I run a lot earlier than he does as well. I run at 4 o'clock in the morning. And like he said, every time that I've been there, even at 4 o'clock in the morning, there's been other people at that track. That track is old, very old. I'll put it this way. Last time I think that track was redone, I think the Brewers played in the World Series. So we'll just leave it at that. Because Mr. Verbo is probably way before your time. Can't talk. And then like Bailey said too, the circumstances around our track practices right now, we start at 3:15. We have to stop around 3:40, 3:45 because that's what time the buses are supposed to be there. Sometimes they don't come until 4 o'clock. 4:05. So we've stopped practice now for 20 minutes, hop on a bus 2 miles away. Some students drive and some students take more than a half an hour to get over there, even though it's 2 miles, come with McDonald's and all kinds of stuff, not ready for practice. Right. So we end up losing athletes just in that 2 mile range, big time. Start practice again about 4:15. Now we have to share a resource with Nathan Hale on the same track. Try having like 2 football teams on the same field, trying to coordinate practices together, using the same equipment. It is cumbersome, big time, and it's not fun at all. Not to mention the rivalry that's there. It's Hale versus Central. It's going to be there, right? Us versus them. We don't like it, but we like it. So the track at Wright, if it is redone, will benefit Central athletics as a whole, specifically track because like Bailey said, it's half-mile away, just the tick less. That could be our warm-up over there. We don't have to stop. We don't have to get on a bus, which costs money. We take 2 buses over to the complex. We take 1 back. So that's 3 buses each day that's booked for us that sometimes we don't even use because of weather or whatnot. Shared resources, all of a sudden goes out the window because there's been days where Hale has a track meet. We can't practice on that track if they're having a track meet, right? So it'd be benefit for the community, like Coach K said, and the school itself to have a place that Central Track, Central Athletics could call a practice home and then build off of that. You want better athletics at Central? This is step number 1. Thank you.
All right. I don't think that there's anyone else signed up, so I'll wait just in case someone else does want to sign up here for a moment. All right, I don't see anybody entering anything, so at this time I will close public comments. And we will move on to our next item, which is our board reports, starting with 8.1, the review of the board calendar. And so what we have here tonight, July 27th, we have a regularly scheduled board meeting that includes a financial stability and efficiency and recreation and community services workshop, talking about the pool and Frank Lloyd Wright Athletic Complex, and then a 5-year financial stabilization plan. On August 10th, we have a regularly scheduled board meeting, which will include recreation and community services workshop. August 15th, the board will have a school board retreat, which currently the location is TBD. And then on August 24th, we have a regularly scheduled board meeting that again has a recreation and community services workshop, and that one will deal with a different topic at that time, including our 2024 referendum updates for workshop number 5. That is our board calendar. And so with that, then that will move us on to 8.2, our committee reports, which I believe we have 1 person speaking on 2 reports here. So 8.2.1, Ms. Deal, would you go for the college and career readiness report?
All right. Sorry. All right, the College and Career Readiness Committee met on July 13th. For new business, we had alternative pathways to graduation discussion. So Assistant Superintendent Aaron Norris led a discussion around the possibility of an alternative school in the former Madison Elementary building. At this time, the building is home to several programs, including Shared Journeys, Community Transition Services, and GoTo. This change would support a positive change in the state report cards, especially in the area of graduation rate. There was also discussions of expanding the reduced credit graduation pathway to students at Central, Nathan Hale, and Docky, who are eligible for this pathway but want to attend school in person. And that's what we talked about. Any questions?
Questions for the college and career readiness? All right, seeing none. Off the hook there. So 8.2.2, employee engagement and culture, and the financial stability and efficiency joint committee report.
Okay. All right. We met on July 16th. First, we discussed employee engagement and culture. We went over current vacancy rate. The current vacancy rate is 1.23%. Open positions includes 8 teaching positions. There'll be 10 interns in the district this fall, with 4 of them working towards their special education license. A suggestion was made to track our time to fill vacancy rate and collect data on why candidates rescind an offer. Reviewed turnover data. Staff turnover has decreased from 15.24% in the 22-23 school year to 10.26% in the 25-26 school year. Ms. Delicat reported that the new compensation model appears to be working and is competitive with other districts. There was a suggestion to break down turnover data by school in the future. And then suggestion box response card draft review. So Ms. Delicat shared a draft of the suggestion box response card that will be available for staff to complete. The card breaks down concerns into categories and it has a spot to suggest possible solutions. There's also a spot to provide positive feedback. An electronic version of the card will be available for staff if they prefer to complete the card this way. Staff are able to provide their information for the purpose of follow-up, or they can remain anonymous. And then for our financial stability and efficiency part of the meeting, first discuss the post-65 retiree health insurance renewal. Mr. Norris reported that the expansion of the Inflation Reduction Act will allow the district to decouple the medical and pharmacy parts of Medicare. This will yield a 26% reduction in cost to our district over the next 2 years. For our pre-65 health insurance renewal, negotiations around health insurance will be starting along with an analysis of a self-insurance option. There will be a workshop at the end of August with more information about fully insured insurance versus being self-insured. And then an update for Longfellow. Mr. Norris reported that Housing for All received WIDA approval and has 60 days to secure financing. They're asking for an extension until October to get this funding. There was some discussion on the steps to take after the funding is secured, including having Housing for All. More to come on this as we secure an extension. Is that there was some discussion on the steps to take after the funding is secured. More to come on this as we secure an extension. Compensation model. Mr. Norris reported that the internal team met to start developing compensation models for other employee groups, including educational assistants, EAs, and administrative staff. And then financial stabilization plan. Mr. Norris asked if there are any questions from committee members regarding the upcoming workshop, which is tonight. Discussion is centered around emphasizing the benefits of under-levying to pay off our referendum loans sooner, which again, there'll be more information shared tonight about that. And that is what we talked about. Any questions?
All right. Any questions from the board? It was quite a big meeting. Yes, Mr. Lee.
Not a question, just wanted to provide a small clarification. So the numbers for the vacancy rates were of, I believe, July 9th, I think is when that was of. So that rate may be different now, but we are, as a board, getting updates on that regularly. So we can see week by week kind of how things are going. And as we resignations and hirings completed, then that's modified. And we'll see that throughout the school year, as that'll be a regular thing for us moving forward. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other comments?
Just Mr. Norris, do you have the updated number from today? Janet in our meeting today, I know she gave it to us. Just for the record, just want to make sure we have it. I think it was in the document she shared with us. In 1 second, I can just find it for the public right here. Are you? Same number? Okay. All right. Okay. They were being closed out today, matter of fact. So I want to say she said a little bit over 1% or below 1%. It was somewhere up in there. So very much better than we've been in the past. All right.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? All right. From there then, we'll move to 8.3, our board member reports of community events. I know everyone is busy, but is there anything that has been, everybody been going to? Yes.
Don't you look at me, Noah. You know what I did. I took the opportunity last week to attend a Susical at Dotkey, the middle school musical number. It was fantastic. I love the theater at Dotkey. I love the whole setup of it. It's really, really nice. I like that it's upstairs. My only criticism is it's so hot. It is so hot, and the summer musical is always at Dotkey. I would love to be able to go to that show and not be in a torture chamber as I was. But the kids were fantastic. The performance was great. The show was great. It was a great time. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Rubos. Anyone else? Reports of community events? No? All right. All right. And like you, I was out of town, so I didn't make it to anything this week here or last week, but we'll see what comes up because we have quite a few opportunities to get out to the community here coming up. So we'll go to 8.4, other updates and information. At this time, I have none. So we'll move on to our consent agenda tonight, which includes 9.1, our approval of minutes, 9.2, our employment summary, 9.3, our supplementary contracts, and 9.4, our financial report summary. Does anyone need anything separated out? All right, then I guess at this time I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve consent agenda 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, and 9.4.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Are there any modifications? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so that will pass. And that will take us on to our action items, starting with 10.1, the Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian Church donation. Dr. Robinson.
Yes, as we mentioned earlier, we were given a donation of $20,000 specifically to go towards Hoover Elementary School to support student programming. And because of board policy with the amount, it requires approval from the board. And so we're asking the board to approve the donation of $20,000 from the Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian Church to the Hoover Elementary School.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Lee?
Just have a comment. I just want to express my thanks for them to think about our school and donating some of their hard-earned dollars to help support our students for this year and many years to come. So I just want to express my thanks for that.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve 10.1 Greenfield Avenue Presbyterian Church donation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any modifications? All right. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Passes. We'll move on to 10.2, the update contract information for Director of Student Services on board policies and administrative guidelines. Dr. Robinson.
Yeah, so as we were going through policies and trying to update everything, Mr. Becker brought it to our attention that we had some and staff member that just left that was still listed. So good catch, Mr. Becker. So these approvals are actually just to take Laura off as the contact for these particular policies and to add Teresa as the Director of Student Services specifically for these policies.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve 10.2.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any modification? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that passes as well. Move us down to 10.3, formal policies in response to the 2025 Wisconsin Act 89 requirement. Dr. Robinson.
So the next approval that we're asking for to approve the latest policy and changes, Act 89 was approved by the state legislature in 2025 and enacted in March 26th, I'm sorry, that requires all public and private schools to adopt formal policies by September 1st, 2026, governing appropriate communication between employees and students both during and outside of school hours. The law mandates annual staff training to help school personnel identify, prevent, and report grooming behaviors and professional boundary violations. So all of these particular policies are dealing with grooming. I want to be clear. I know Board President sent me a couple of questions today. Honestly, we work with Neola to really come up with the type of language that was approved by our attorneys. So a lot of the stuff from a legal standpoint makes and ensures that we're in compliance with this particular law. So it is what in quote unquote the grooming statutes, but that's where we are for these particular policies, and we're asking for approval tonight.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing none, at this time I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve 10.3 formal policies in response to 2025 Wisconsin Act 89 requirement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any modifications? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that passes. That'll take us on to 10.4. 10.4 is our resolution authorizing an easement at Mitchell Elementary School, and this will be presented by Mr. Norris and Mr. Ekman.
Thank you. As you stated, this is for a resolution for an easement at Mitchell School. The city of West Allis is updating their street lighting in the Mitchell Elementary School neighborhood. And so what they will be doing is they're going to put a street lighting cabinet on the terrace in the southwest corner of the property where Mitchell is. Then what they'll do is they'll run cables underneath the sidewalk, underneath the fence. They'll attach it to a pole that they want to put in as part of the easement, a 20-foot pole, and then run the wires and cabling up the pole and then run it across to an existing pole that they have. And the whole area is approximately 8 foot by 20 foot. It's inside the fenced in area at the far southwest corner of the property back where the trees are.
All right, questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Verbos.
It won't affect any of the greenery that's been growing in that area, correct?
Not at all.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? Comments? All right, seeing none at this time, then I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve 10.4 resolution authorizing easement at Mitchell Elementary School.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Are there any modifications? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, and that'll pass. Thank you, gentlemen. That will take us to, or that is the end of our action items for tonight, and that will take us to our workshop, which is 11.1, the Financial Stability and Efficiency and Recreation and Community Services Joint Committee Workshop regarding the pool and the youth athletic complex, as well as the 5-year financial stabilization plan. So this would be 2 minutes to set up. Yeah, okay, we can pause for a moment. We're not at recess, but we can pause. Hang on, just making sure that Brandon got those turned back on. Are you guys all set? Okay. Dr. Robinson, go ahead.
Before we begin, I just want to thank everyone who's come tonight to hear and to be a part of the conversation. I want to thank Mr. Norris as well as Shelley for organizing all of this and the committees that have worked and as a joint effort to ensure that our community comes first. And I say community because I believe that this project, or these projects, I should say, are really benefiting the entire West Allis, West Milwaukee community. It's not targeted to around one area. It's really going across multiple genres with athletics, with arts and community work. And we're going to kind of talk about sort of like what that vision is. I want to thank them for taking some of my crazy ideas and incorporating that in some of these projects. And so I'm excited to sit and listen. I understand that Mr. Norris has about 2 hours worth of slides to share with us tonight. And so let's buckle up, right? Let's buckle up. I'm going to turn it over to you then.
Okay. Well, thank you this evening. Appreciate the introduction. So we've spent a few months on this. I believe nearly every board member's kind of had their eyes a little bit into this. And so we wanted to spend some time, hopefully an hour, to Dr. Robinson's earlier comment. We're hoping an hour to dive deep. The first portion of the evening, the first 30 minutes-ish, is for Shelley to walk us through kind of all the details around the recreation projects. And then the second portion, myself and the team from Baird will be here. Michael Comps is on the way as well to talk through kind of the financial stabilization plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shelley to kick us off. The materials you have in front of you, we have the slide deck you can kind of pan through. We've handed out a couple additional things for you to be able to see things that are going to be a little more difficult to see on the screen today. But if you have any questions, we're going to try to hold them to the end. But if you have clarifications of where we're talking about specific things as Shelley gets into renderings, feel free and we'll kind of go across the room and make sure you guys are looking at the specific thing we're talking about. So with that, I'll turn over to Shelley.
All right. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Dr. Robinson and board. If you want to go to the next slide. So as you know, I'll be talking about two different projects and we'll take them both separately. But the first one is the Activity and Fitness Center Phase 3, which primarily consists of the warm water pool and lap walking pool. And then there's no official name yet, but we were trying to figure out like, what do we want to call the space, or what are we going to, how do we refer to the space at Frank Lloyd Wright? Because it's so much more than just the track. There's a lot of, and you'll see that in the renderings. So right now we're just calling it the Outdoor Community Commons. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and what that looks like. So the Activity and Fitness Center, as I mentioned, it's the warm water pool and lap walking pool. We've been working with C.G. Schmidt, and so kind of want to share like what's new or what's different than the last 2 times, or actually 3 times we met as committees. So C.G. Schmidt has been working with Growth Design Group and shared like 4 or 5 just different designs and renderings. And then I pulled together some key members of our team, and that was Kristen Schmalfelt, who's our aquatics manager, Chad Larson, who's our assistant director and oversees all our facilities and operations, and then Tammy Francis, who's our office manager and oversees all the front office staff. And we really talked about how things would flow, how those 3 kind of separate sectors work together, and we reviewed the 4 different designs that Growth Design Group proposed to us, asked each other questions, and really dug into them. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Aaron, you'll see this is sort of kind of for now where we've landed. And as you look at it, you'll see it's not real well defined yet, but the area for the lap walking pool and the warm water pool. And then we've added a number of, actually a lot more individual family shower rooms, right? Because we anticipate if this is a warm water pool, a lot of infant and young child swim lessons that we really can't do right now because our pools that we do have access to are tad cold for those type of classes. So, but a combination of with just similar to the Activity and Fitness Center, or for the fitness center, a bank of lockers, along with some area for the staff that'll be there. And one of the cool things we did is at a window. So when you see like a pool office, that's not people like really in there sitting. It's just kind of a space for when we have our manager on board, and there'll be like a CPO, certified pool operator, all the things they can see out when they're in that space out into the pool and the things that are happening. So we're going to share, this is what's new. I don't think anybody has seen these quite yet. Some renderings from Growth and CG Schmidt. This exterior rendering is if you're looking at the building from Highway 100 and kind of the Highway 100 and Greenfield area. So the pool will be located in the space moving to the south on the property. Then Eric can go to the next one. Yep. Now this view is from the front of the building. So you'll see there where those blue awnings are, that's down by the gym and our main entrance. Middle section is the current fitness center. And then the area kind of where those trees are is the pool area. And then this is just a closer up. So if you're actually standing in the parking lot, you'd be able to see, you know, through the windows there into that pool area. And one of the things that I thought was really cool about this, if you look close, you can see our logo on the wall through the windows of the pool area. Then moving into the interior rendering, originally they had proposed, and when we first started talking with them, we're like, well, yeah, that makes sense to have the pool have its own separate lobby and entrance. But the more we talked about it as a staff and looking at other models of other similar type facilities, we really felt it was best to have one entrance point for safety and security. And really, if the fitness center's open, the pool's open. If the pool's open, fitness center. So everything would be pretty much open at the same time. So we, through our conversations, we really shrunk the area. We didn't get rid of it, right? Because we want a place for people, parents, to wait while they're, you know, people are at classes or before their class. But everybody will enter in the main entrance. And this is just an interior rendering from that kind of lobby area. And then this is the cool one, right? And there's still some work to, you know, be done, but our initial designs, that's kind of just a vision of what that warm water pool area will look like. And then back to the budget. So we're working about a was it a $10 to $12 million budget? Still some things to fine tune. We will, if this project continues to move forward, we will be bringing on a pool consultant that'll work with both CG Schmidt and Growth and our team to really better define the space, the exact mechanicals we're going to need, just HVAC, all those type of things. But I know one of the questions, and I think Jane, you may have been the one to bring it up during our committee meeting, was about the year-to-year operational expenses. And so we've done some work with CG Schmidt as far as kind of determining utilities, chemicals, all those things. And so a best case guesstimate is about 53 to 72 a year. So we looked at right now, what type of revenue would we be able to anticipate to offset that? And so just based on our current adult aquatic classes, because that was kind of the best thing we could base it off of, and our fitness center revenue, we anticipate about 50,000 revenue a year. So really, the offset would potentially only be about 20,000 out of our operational budget to cover expenses, which for a pool was really pretty good. So our rationale, why this? The warm water pool and lap walking pool has always been a part of our proposal for the space here when we were converting from former middle school to an activity and fitness center. And that dates back as far as 2022. And then kind of, as you guys know, we completed, and we knew we'd have to do this in phases from a financial perspective. Phase 1 completed in December of 24. Phase 2 completed in November of 25, and that was the fitness center. I will tell you, we have a number of participants that belong to the fitness center that ask us on the daily, when's the pool coming? They're very excited to hear about, and they've been following this probably more so than ever before, kind of our school board meetings and things to track the progress of where we're at by that. So it is something that we get asked about regularly. And it will just allow for increased programming. Kind of as I mentioned earlier, our current pools, either A, we don't have access, obviously, during the day, during the school year. They're more designed for competition and swim type lessons. They work great for that, but they're not designed for therapeutic reasons or, adult fitness. Again, some of those younger child classes. So this would really present more opportunities. And I will say we have seen and become friends with many community members that probably never would have taken a rec program before, but now are members of the fitness center. And I think that'll only grow when we also have, an opportunity for the pool as well.
And just to chime in quick, maybe Shelley, you could share on this. So one of the things that we've talked about on the finance committee is that, some of the questions will come, well, how many people use our pools as an indication potentially of how many might use this? And I think it's a difficult question because I'm not sure it's completely correlated in the sense that, for example, maybe Shelley could share, like when the fitness center was completed, how's the membership grown from then until now?
We've seen steady growth from day one when we opened in January. And actually, we anticipated right in the summer months, you're going to see a decline, right? People just get outside. Our fitness center manager with just some creative marketing and incentives, right? If you joined in June or July, you got one free month. We saw more new members in both the months of June and our tracking for July than we did in the month of May. So, and then another probably good example of, right, when you do something new and it attracts maybe a different clientele that you didn't formerly have. This summer, Kristen, our aquatics manager, partnered, and I think I've shared this previously, with Milwaukee County and particularly at Cool Waters to offer outdoor aqua Zumba. Our evening class has 50 people enrolled, right? So that's a number probably twice as many as we see in our indoor class. So just, right, there's a clientele in the population out there that we don't even know about, I think, yet that we could serve in addition to those we're currently serving. All right, now our next project, the Frank Lloyd Wright, again, for lack of better terms, Community Commons is kind of just what we're calling it right now. And joining us over here to our left is Scott Kraholski from Point of Beginnings. They're who we've been really have been working with on this project. That's just kind of there, and Scott can speak a little bit more to it, but outdoor athletic facilities is really one of their expertise. There's a number of high schools and school districts across the state of Wisconsin that they've worked with and have been able to share some of that work with us so we can see. One of the things I'm really excited to share with you, and if you can see, and they shared with us, is a numbered sort of labeled diagram, which I think is really helpful for pointing out. And I'm just kind of going to walk through that as we go. So first, focusing on just that track space. And as many of our track coaches have shared, and I can attest to, the current track that's there needs some attention. The surface is very old and is more of an asphalt. And I'll say I've driven by and been over there many times throughout the day, and there's always people out there using it. So the first thing is, if you see the number 1 labeled, we'll have a new 8-lane running track with a polyurethane surface. And then there's also going to be like a retaining wall kind of running along that north edge of the track. And you guys are familiar, Frank Lloyd Wright is built, I don't know how you want to label it, down sort of a valley. There's, all these different grades. So that's the other thing, working with Scott and his team has been great with helping us maximize that space and get the, kind of the best use out of that space using the grade that we have there. Number 2 you see labeled on there is for when it's actually new, jumping and throwing events. We really don't have current spaces at Frank Lloyd Wright for that to safely happen. We make, again, use of the space that's out there, but there's not designated spaces. Spot number 3 would be the synthetic turf and football soccer fields that could be used. I will just say our flag football program is growing unbelievably. Bobby and I were just actually talking about it earlier today, and especially too for girls participating in flag football. So that would be a space that could be used for that. And also our soccer program this summer, our numbers are even higher than last summer, and our 6th, 7th, 8th grade soccer teams, that league is growing. So this could be a space that they could practice and play both in the fall and summer. Spot number 4, if you see on there, that's our bleachers and kind of a press box area or an announcing. One of the challenges we have, so our department oversees the track program at both Frank Lloyd Wright and West Milwaukee. A current challenge for us is there's very few meets we can get into. There's just very few offered by other schools. And when they do, it's very select. Either they'll only take a certain number of teams, or you can only send a certain number of kids, certain grades, all those things. So this would allow us an opportunity to host our own meets. We've done it out at the athletic complex. The challenge is it displaces both Hale and Central for practice. So this would allow us opportunity to do that, as well as a number of other events. I'm thinking, even school assemblies, or you need if for some reason the building, they need to exit the building and evacuate, but not leave, they could do that out there as well. Number 5 is stadium lighting. We would want to consider, if we're going to kind of do this now and not maybe hold off and do it later on. We don't anticipate needing lights, but the one time you don't is when then you're like, where are the lights, and we could use them. So we asked Scott to include them in the plan. Number 6, it will be a concession and restroom building. Right now, it's Porta Johns, and I think maybe one. So having a space where obviously running water, people, we have never kind of explored the opportunity or need for doing concessions out there, but I guess if we're going to be hosting meets and hosting events, it makes really good sense to have that space. Other spaces, number 7 will be an asphalt basketball court. That was an ask of Frank Lloyd Wright for their students to have an outdoor space. And I mean, obviously anybody in the community can use that as a recreational space. Number 8 is new, and I think Dr. Robinson alluded to this when he poses challenges to us or, comes up with some of those ideas. I will admit this is a great idea that he had, and we're really excited about it. It's an outdoor amphitheater or an outdoor venue where you could have music. And the other day we hosted for our older population, kind of a one-man band. Unfortunately, due to weather, we had to move it inside. But the amount of people that were excited to be able to go see them during the day on a weekday. So this space would just provide so many opportunities. I just started to think, right? Whether you have families there and a magician or, a little kids concert or outdoor concerts for older adults. But the thing I wanted to kind of caution is we're not looking to be like, I'm trying to think of what it's called out at the Franklin Sports Club, like The Rock, right? Yeah. Right. I don't want community members to be like, wait a minute, I don't want this big music venue and blaring and all those things. That is not this. Frank Lloyd Wright could, maybe it's a chorus concert, right? Or there's smaller orchestra groups or band groups, any of the things that could be done out there in that amphitheater area. Then obviously there's, when we're working with this much area and disruption and things like that, we're going to have to look at some stormwater. And so we got the kind of wet pond, but if you've been at the rec center, we have the stormwater retention there. You probably don't even know there's water ever in there because there's just a lot of native plants and things that have been planted in there. So yeah, in a heavy rain, there's water in there and then it drains out. And then obviously at number 11, the sidewalks, and we've talked about this already. This will help significantly. And we've already met with members of City of West Dallas, number of different departments to talk about just traffic safety patterns on Cleveland and how this could really help to resolve a lot of the issues that they've seen and challenges. But plenty of parking for anything and everything that might be going on there. And even if there's multiple things happening at one time. So we really, when we were working with Scott and looking, right, some of the things maybe you look at and you're like, aren't ideal. Like, why would you put that there? Maybe, like the jump events, but in order to get the amphitheater in a place that's close to parking at least, those are some of the best locations for that. And then lastly, just kind of sidewalks too. You'll see there's primarily sidewalks and pathways connecting all the areas and spaces so that it's accessible and people can get to all the different things that they'd want to get to on the property. these are just two examples. So when we started talking about it, I asked them, the one up in the upper left-hand corner, I think, Germantown? Cedarburg. Oh, yeah, yeah. It's from Aaron, Cedarburg. But one I've shared, like Germantown, I know has one where it's, and this is too, we're still kind of working out some of those details as we continue to move here. Is it an elevated stage? Is it flat even? The one on my right-hand side there is it's called the AMP at Greenfield, in the city of Greenfield at Conkle Park, that hosts a number of concerts. So it's a very slightly elevated stage, but really all the seating is pretty much at ground level. And as you can see, it's more of, and that's kind of our plan. It's the bring your lawn chair kind of seating, not built-in seating. We did originally kind of talk about that, but it really kind of impacted the dynamics with parking and things like that. So these are kind of more of those structures that we're looking at. And then lastly, the budget. So overall, here's the anticipated budget for that entire project. We kind of went all in. Previously, we sort of talked about phasing it out, but we wanted to talk about what would it look like if we just said, we're doing this, let's kind of do it all at once and get it done, which will, I think, ultimately eventually help save costs over time, right, as things continue to go and inflation. But we're looking at just under 10 million for the entire project. So our rationale for this project, track is the largest sport at Frank Lloyd Wright. I think this last year we had over 120 kids that participated, right? And when I talked about meets, it's really hard to justify to parents and even harder to kids. Like, I know you're putting in all this work, you're putting in all this time, and you get to run one meet for like 30 seconds, like, right? Just the opportunities there. And just the track surface itself and the jump events and throwing events will have it all there for them. It's increased access for our youth sports program, soccer, and then also including football. Definitely improved community usage. As we all mentioned, that track does get used. I've even seen families, which I don't know that this will be the greatest for that, but kids learning to ride their bikes, right? Maybe a sidewalk or city streets aren't necessarily the safest for that anymore. But this could, the sidewalks there and the pathways there can provide that for them. Definitely improve traffic pattern and safety at Frank Lloyd Wright and the residents. And then the outdoor fine arts venue. I think that's all I have. And now it's Aaron's turn. How do we get this done?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron. Aaron, before you get started, and Shelley, could you hang out for just a second? Could we ask questions on that?
Over here. Oh, you want to do it?
For you, for the facilities. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I thought we were doing them all at the end, but we can do them now.
Well, in case people forget after the epicness of Aaron's presentations.
Good point.
So before we move on, are there any questions about the facilities components from the board? Mr. Becker.
Thanks very much for the presentation. The first thing I think about with the FLW is I know the track seasons overlap a little bit, and we've heard a couple times about the difficulties. So I think it'd be great when the FLW kids are not in track and Central can have it for practice. But what does it look like when they're trying to share that space for daily practice? Has that been a conversation between the two schools?
We did, and we'd actually welcome the opportunity. And we've tried to have that a couple times, right? Transporting our kids out to the athletic complex is a challenge. And I know even from the Hale side, they've indicated an interest in working with our track athletes. Our current intermediate school coaches are great, and I think they try to do the best they can. But unlike high school track, we don't have the luxury of hiring like, you're the sprints coach, you're the distance coach, you're the throws coach, the jumps coach. We're like, who's interested in helping us with track, right? And so this will help. And I think we talked a little bit like with the 8 lanes and the different areas, we think it can be well coordinated. So, right, we can all be out there and using it together because it is the same season.
All right. Other questions from the board? Mr. Lee?
So just one question on the activity fitness centers phase 3. Would the thought process be a separate sort of fee that you're paying to access the pool? Would you be having, or just one activities fitness center membership that would get you access to everything?
Yeah, so we've talked about a number of different options. Similar now, right? If you just want to do swim lessons, you're paying just for your lesson. But we've talked about bundling. We've even done that right now with the track at the rec center and then the fitness center here. If you want to do both, you get a discount, we bundle it together. So there's a different rate. So yeah, we'll look to provide like an all-in member rate and then kind of the a la carte, right? I might only want the fitness center. That's all I want to do. I want the fitness center, the swim, I got kids, all the different things. So we'll work to provide a number of different membership levels that kind of meet everybody's individual needs and or do some like open, right? Like currently now we do open swim. So maybe we just have some open lap walking hours where people can just, I need it for, I don't know, a couple weeks to rehab or something. Like we don't want to also lock people into things that they may not necessarily need.
Okay, thank you. And then just a couple questions on the community complex here. So number 2 is on the map twice. So is the brown one for shot put and the one within inside the track for discus?
Yes, right as Scott, we talked about that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually on there 3 times, right? So we have the 2.
Oh, sure. And
Yeah,
then
the 2
running
throws,
sessions.
discus and shot put, and then the long obviously is where the jumps area would be. Yeah, and that was one of the, like when we look at it, we're kind of like, not probably maybe necessarily ideal, but at the same time, moving it out, it really limits where and, like the amphitheater part would go. And for us, we kind of felt it was more important to get that probably closer to parking and better access because a lot more people would access that than potentially a discus. We're looking at maybe half a dozen kids.
Sure. Yep. There's just safety things with discus too you have to take into account because that goes a lot further. And especially when you're talking about middle school students who are learning how to throw a discus, can go in the wrong direction quite easily. And if you have people using the track or other things happening on that space, we just want to make sure that, I don't know what sort of netting or other things that you're going to, what you would incorporate with that, but that would be the concern that I would have, seeing people throw backwards sometimes when they're doing discus. So we just want to make sure that that is taken into account in addition. So
I know Scott was working on, they already have a project that they've worked on that did a model similar to this based on limited space. So I know he'll be kind of sharing what like netting or safety measures they have in place too.
okay. I also think when you have facilities like that, it would encourage more kids to try it. Because right now, my daughter goes to FLW and we ask, who's doing this? Like, there's like no one like that is trying it. But if you actually have a space where here you go, this is how you throw it, and this is how you throw it, and you have a spot to sit and do it, and it's similar to where you would actually, when you're actually doing a competition, I think that would help encourage more participation in that. And I know that when it comes to high school, a lot of kids are trying it for the first time ever. So it would be good to encourage that earlier on. And if we have the ability to do more track meets at the middle school level, and I presume that, obviously West Milwaukee can then be involved with that as well, as far as their team goes. That would encourage, again, building that those athletes earlier and having those skills when by the time they come to high school level, they are a little bit more well-versed in those specific field events, which right now I think is very minimal just because of how things are. My last question right now is regarding the amphitheater. Have we considered possibly utilizing that, weather permitting, for graduations at FLW?
I mean, we could. I don't know that we really talked about that necessarily, but that's a great, right? Like a completion ceremony or anything, whether it's the amphitheater or even the kind of track facility itself, because there is seating for 500. I'd have to have some conversation with, Jason Fish over there. I don't know how many people typically, I know that gym is pretty packed. And like, I don't know, somebody comment, it gets warm. Oh, Mr. Verbo, as you talked about how warm it can get, right? So either one of those two spaces could be used for things like that. Yeah, I think that's kind of the neat thing about both. Kind of the track area, bleacher area, and the amphitheater. It's going to open a lot of different opportunities for us that we haven't had in the past.
I also see potential for the amphitheater with all of the different programming that are offered through the rec department, where you have performances, either instrumental or vocal, where you could put on like a, I don't want to, like a one night where like multiple people or multiple groups like perform something, whether it's everything or one or two things that they know. And that could be something that could be like a community series thing where people could come and enjoy that and see what's happening. And that is also an opportunity to recruit people into those things too as well. Like, hey, have you tried this out before? So I think that's a good community benefit as well.
So yeah, I was just going to comment on that. When I kind of brought this out first time, I remember Aaron looking at me like, "What?" And then the next time we talked about it, he had all these grand ideas to do with, in the summertime especially, would bring people to that particular space. So he has some ideas that he's been throwing at me to just kind of have like a series of events, maybe a weekly, to bring the community in. That's just an idea I think that we haven't really tapped into as a community, that we're trying to figure out, like, how do we bring more people in to see what we're doing? And this is an organic opportunity for that to happen. I'll just want to comment too, before you make your next comment. I see a lot of green space on here as well. And so I know that there's a certain board member up here who has a green thumb. And I know she would love some type of opportunity to have a community garden. So there are a lot of things that are kind of going through my mind, especially with the retention pond being there. So the environmental science stuff as well. So a lot of different potential with the expansion across genres within this. So I'm saying that because remember we started out with saying, yeah, we're talking about athletics a little bit, but I want to move away and talk about how this benefits the entire community. So just wanted to comment on that.
Last thing, I guess, is just in regards to that amphitheater, with the proximity to the residents there, will we need to have some sort of noise breaks or specific type of fencing? Yeah, that would need to be done because how close it is. The same thing with the shot put. You're probably not going to throw it that far, but it's something that we have, so we're not losing things into people's backyards that we have to try to go get. I mean, basketball, maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure what that distance is between the edge of that and where the property starts, but we don't want people to like got a bunch of shot puts in my backyard and dinging it up.
Yeah, so basketball, I think, will be fine. And that's kind of too why we kept the amphitheater down where it is. Like, that's also kind of like the loading dock, receiving area. When people come there, we want them to see, have great visuals, not necessarily like, oh, there's the dumpster. But the back of the building is what faces their houses. So the building structure itself will somewhat serve as a noise. So when people are performing, they're actually projecting out towards 92nd Street. So, but yeah, we will be talking about that as we move forward in the project. We already kind of had that conversation. And even when we talked about location, right? Like, we have to be very considerate of our neighbors and what we're doing there. But that's also why we talked about if it's smaller, right? 2-piece, 3-piece, we're either limiting kind of the sound projection and also limiting the hours, right? So we're not necessarily doing this till midnight, things like that. We want to be, considerate of the neighbors, and it be something that they can just walk out their, front door and, hey, I'm here at this great, awesome thing. So that's why we also talked about location. Because when we were working through this, I said, we kind of originally had it in the number 7 and number 2 spot. And I said, if an event draws a bigger crowd, my concern would be that there's not enough parking at the back of Frank Lloyd Wright, and it spills out into the neighborhood. And I thought that could be a real concern for our neighbors, or would not be a positive for the project to put it there. So that's why that's located down there. But really, in that kind of whole corner, there's not a lot of homes. They really start where you can kind of see the back of the building. At that amphitheater.
So those other things aren't houses there?
That gray shaded kind where you see the red rectangle in the bottom, like looking up at that screen, the bottom left-hand corner, those are houses. And I'm trying to think of the street that's there. Thank you, Montana. Yeah.
So that's Montana there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And we would obviously, as we're getting further along, notify everyone there that this is something that we're considering, so they could have an opportunity to provide questions, comments, concerns
Yeah.
before we start.
And I anticipate
finalizing
it'll be
things.
like every other kind of project, right? We'll apply for permits through the city. They'll no public notice, do a public hearing, plan commission, all those things. So we'll, make sure they all have ample opportunity to ask questions or weigh in, but
And as far as getting from the upper campus to the lower campus, which is kind of how I look at it, what do we envision there for being able to have, if people are parking up there because of either necessity, because the lower parking is full and they're trying to get down into the stadium itself, is obviously we'd have to have handicap accessible ramps or something like that we go in there. You can't just do stairs.
yeah. So where you see kind of where it's labeled 6 and 4, that's really built into the hill. But where it starts is you're kind of at like the back of the stadium is kind of at the ground level. So you're walking down into, or right, like you said, there would be ramps. It would be all handicap accessible.
Okay.
Plus there is walkways, around. You see that light gray shaded area.
Yeah.
There's pathways kind of around the whole complex there.
So it'd be a gradual grade or whatever that would be able to, because I just want, because that is a steep hill there. So I wasn't sure how feasible it would be for someone who has in a real wheelchair per se and was trying
Right.
to go down that thing.
The nice thing about that, you're kind of at the plaza level, I guess we would kind of call that, right? Where the concessions is. So there could be like stadium seating right there where the handicap accessible seating is, where you don't necessarily have to get down to the bottom row or that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Sure.
I live across the street from Frank Lloyd Wright, and for many, many years I've walked the track. And one of the things that I've noticed is, and I've always kind of had the perspective now that I'm a board member, I always think about the safety of our children, and so while their school is in session, people are walking the track. And I always say, well, nothing's happened so far, like we've shared it with the community. But now that this would become a very attractive space, and we would encourage community members to come during the day, I have a little trepidation about community members being in the same location as our students. And like even the basketball courts, like, okay, so we've got, some grownups deciding to have a basketball game while we are in session, or we've got some seniors that are listening to music while our kids are in session. Just not sure how I feel about that. And have we thought about the safety piece?
Yeah, we've talked with, Jason on that. I think it's kind of a little bit along the same lines of like our playground spaces. They're not all secure, right? They're kind of open.
Allow people to come onto the playgrounds during school.
I will say we not necessarily maybe during school, right? Their staff,
Yeah.
supervise their approach. That probably would be the same here, because we experience that after school quite often, right? Where people come and they're like, well, there's no school, right? And we permit it. And that's kind of what we would do the same, for the school. Like it's permitted for this particular use during this time, like, or the stage or the basketball court, right? So, and the other thing is our plan is our staff would be the ones maintaining this. So there will be eyes out there, right? Whether it's cleaning bathrooms, doing the garbage. Right now, like we do same thing at Irving. We've created some spaces out there, and I don't know if it's just a different location or I don't know, adults. Primarily the space there is used for people to walk their dogs because it's a lot of green space, but haven't really had any issues with school day and kids. But it is a great point, but that's kind of the balance and the challenge, right? Like Nathan Hale's locked and people are like, well, I'd love to use it, but I can't get in there. So it's, kind of that give and take there.
And I think to your point, Jay, I think it's a good point to bring up. I think the thought is just trying to create some schedule and then having that be consistent during school. So we know when the school is using it during the day, when they're not. And so making it accessible and then making that known to the school administration, Officer Randall, things like that. That way, maybe it's into the building's administrative plans that, hey, 30 minutes for lunch start, Chris walks outside I mean, just some procedures around that to ensure that we're ahead of that, because I think you're right. I mean, all it takes is one thing to happen before it's like, well, who thought of that, right? Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I had one question, and just that, is this, if we were to go forward and look at this, is this the end all be all arrangement, or is this still under flux and there's other options that are out there that might come up?
This is hot off the press.
This is, so we met last, maybe about a week or 2 weeks ago, and I said, hey, got an idea. Can you help make this work? And so we met and discussed, and even after they showed an initial design, we had conversation and talked, and we moved some things around. And so there's still opportunity to rework some of these things. Yeah, this is not the final.
I would say that the comments probably or decisions, any changes or suggestions probably need to be made in committee and allow that feedback to be taken there, and then we can make some adjustments as needed. Because, like I said, I have the same thing in mind. But first time I saw this was today. I'm embarrassed to say that. It's hot. It's that fresh. Like the ink is still wet. But I'm very impressed by the image. So
thank you.
Nice job.
Okay. And I lied. I had one more question. To do this stuff, do we know how long this would take? Is that a known factor?
That's a
yet?
great question. So, that's the other thing we kind of just sprung on them, was originally the plan, right? We've already kind of changed it. We talked about phasing it out. There's going to be kind of 3 different phases. Now we've said, whoop, let's do this. Like, if we're going to start, let's get it all done. So, we would anticipate probably not starting even construction till spring of 2027. And then you're looking at pretty much kind of a whole year before it's ready in full use.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, or can Aaron move forward? All right. Aaron, it's all yours.
Great. Well, thank you. I think the next question you might say is, well, why are these two put together, right? And so I think I'll try to help answer those things, along with talking about the district's kind of long-term, short-term, depending on your level of thinking on that, around what we're calling the financial stabilization plan. So got Mike and Todd from Baird here. We've been talking about this for, I think, since April, actually. So I was March. I missed a month there. So a long time, a lot of effort's gone into this, a lot of research, a lot of conversations, certainly with us, with the team internally, and I know with you guys as well. So appreciate your endurance here as we keep going through this. So I think to start, I think I want to start with this and end with this, and I'll flesh in throughout kind of how Shelley's projects fit into the district's overall financial picture, because again, you're asking yourself likely, how do you pay for this? How do you pay for this, maintain the community's tax levy, make promises to community members? And I think we're trying to do all that, same as you, okay? So number one, I think the goals of what we're going to show in a minute around the financial stabilization plan are, number one, I think, and first and foremost, front center mind, is maintain or reduce property tax levy for the school district portion for the next 3 to 5 years. I think that's the goal. 3 to 5 is a range because certainly, as I'm sure the gentleman to my left will talk about too, like the state budget can throw a huge influx in that. So we'll talk about how we came to some estimates that those were conservative, and it's kind of playing into we believe the next 2 biennial budgets. The second one is accelerate our capital bond debt repayment, the $70 million bond that was approved through the referendum of 2024, through defeasing debt through the under levying strategy. We believe we can save the community north of $15 million interest. And that's considered outside the revenue limit, which means saving them money is coming directly from the community, okay? Number 3, we would, in turn, another goal and benefit is increasing our operating revenue authority. And then number 4, avoiding any short-term referendum needs. Certainly, as you guys know from our 18 months of referendum discussion and campaign efforts, we are not alone in school districts that are operating underfunded. So the conversation is as loud as it's ever been. I believe in November, I haven't seen the numbers that are out there in terms of school districts across the state, but a lot of my colleagues in the region are going to referendum again because of the needs they have in their community. So it's certainly not a conversation that's gone away. So I think this certainly would help avoid us from having to do something like that should the next biennial not be advantageous for school districts. So what does it look like? We'll do a little bit of education for the public too. I know you guys are well briefed in the revenue limit formula, but I want to go through. I think it's important to understand, at least at some degree of detail of how this works, to get into the details of kind of how it could work for us. And the one thing I'll say before I get too deep into this is that the complexity from my perspective around school finance is that every school district's in a different situation. So one of the questions you might say is, why isn't everyone doing this? And I think the answer I would honestly give, and maybe Todd or Mike might share and expand a bit more, is not every school district is in the same exact situation we are. And that is not just our per pupil, that's not how many kids we have, our state aid considerations, having a recreation department in the school district, having a capital bond, all of those things, for as granular as that seems, play into the ability that where this may or may not make sense for somebody, okay? And so I say that because I think it's the undercurrent throughout the presentation that you'll see here. But to get into the revenue limit computation, as we go through, through a number of times the school year, we take our resident member FT times our per pupil, which is the amount we receive per student. You add some non-recurring exemptions, and then our recurring exemptions this year includes just a projected $1 million in transfer service. When you add those up, it gets you to your total revenue limit authority. That number you subtract from what we call state equalization aid, produces, the A minus B equals C. The C is your revenue limit for your tax levy, okay? Now, those components are important because that is considered the Fund 10 portion of our revenue limit tax levy. So when we add in our Fund 39, which is the capital bond payment for the year, along with our Fund 80 projected levy, that gets you back to 56 million, which is roughly a 1.5% decrease from last year's tax levy. Okay. So that is essentially how we get to how much the community is taxed. And then depending on our equalized value, it produces into a mill rate. Okay. So the question here is, how does under levying play a role in that? A school district is able to under levy the entire Fund 10 portion of the levy should the board want to do so. The question is, well, why would a school board want to do so? So the board can levy up to the district's maximum allowable revenue limit, which I showed before is the 41 million. And then in addition to that, you can levy additional dollars into Fund 39 or Fund 80 at the discretion of the school board. Now, the opposite is also true. School districts do this every year, can levy less or consider under levying for a number of reasons. Number one, in most, I would say, predominantly as school districts do this typically to try to smooth over tax levy impacts. A lot of school districts that have capital bonds in the books don't have to under levy because they can potentially levy less into a Fund 39 to be able to accomplish the same thing. If they have a Fund 80 and they have fund balance, they might not have to under levy. They could simply levy less in Fund 80. There are implications to under levying, which we'll get into. But this can also allow districts to carry a benefit. And so this is another example of how school districts are all different. Okay. I talked about before a non-recurring exemption. Well, one of our largest ticket items in that bucket is called private vouchers. Not every school district's impacted the same from this. So when we talk about what a carryover is, school districts that decide to under levy that don't have those exemptions, it produces a carryover, meaning the board retains that authority in addition to their per pupil. It's a different way that school districts are treated differently based upon the metrics that they have within their school district. So what I want to show you here quickly is kind of what's our history with under levying. And you can see in the most recent history, it hasn't really happened here. We haven't had the need to do this, but dating back to a little over 10 years ago, you can see the school year in the column, in the first column, the amount of the under levy that the board at that time decided to do, the amount of non-recurring exemptions, and then the low revenue ceiling. And I bring up the second two descriptions because we do not want this to happen right now. Can we delay it 2 hours? Okay, let's do that. Okay. So the reason I bring up the non-recurring exemptions and the low revenue ceiling is because those are really important here with how when a school district under levies. So one of the questions that my committee asks is, hey, If a school district under levies, do they lose the authority? And the answer is, it depends. Okay. Nothing like school finance to say it depends. Okay. So I'll give you an example. In 2017-18, the school district, our school district, under levied by 1.98 million. The answer that year is we did not lose the authority the following year. Now that year, if you under levy in that year, you did essentially lose $1.9 million. Now you saved the community $1.9 million too, right? But the reason that didn't affect you moving forward is because that amount was less than your non-recurring exemption. Got that right, Todd? Okay, got it right. Okay. Now, if you look back at previous years in 14-15, in that year, the school district essentially in that year decided to under levy by $108,000. And if you see that their non-recurring exemption was far less than the under levy, then next year, 15-16, the school districts per pupil actually went down. Now that is where a situation where in every year after that, your school district is negatively affected by that one decision. Okay. So conversations around under levying are far more complex than how much should we under levy to accomplish a goal. There are other questions that school boards and finance directors and people get asked all the time about this because it's important. But I think it's important to see that we have a history of doing this. Now, to what extent, that's a good question. But as I'll show in a minute, our non-recurring exemptions beginning in 17-18 started to exponentially increase, which is almost nearly correlated 100% to the private vouchers increasing. So I think this year we're at, I think, almost $15 million in projected non-recurring exemptions. So it's important. So I want to show a couple district examples, and I won't go too deep into this, but I want to show the extent that school districts are doing this across the state. So this is a nice table that shows statewide across all districts, how many districts under levied by year and the total amount that under levy produced as a sum across the state. Not saying that every under levy produces a carryover, because it has to exceed your non-recurring exemption, right? Like the one year we showed, it did not. So we didn't lose per pupil, but at the same time didn't produce a carryover. Okay. This just shows you that it's happened for a number of years, certainly less over the last 3 or 4 years, but substantial numbers. You saw a lot post Act 10 in 2011, 12, 13. And we'll show in a minute that was intentional. A lot of school districts intentionally under levied in those years to offset the negative per pupil they got from the state that year. Okay, we'll show a couple examples of that. And then it's certainly declined, but it's certainly still happening across the state in school districts across Wisconsin. So here's a different way to look at this. Well, what are some districts over the past 3 years? So you can see in 23-24, nice list, and there's 74 other districts, 24-25, 57 others, and then most recently last year, that list plus 50 districts. Oh, did my computer die? It might have. That's not good. Great. Is there a plug in here? Will that reach? Yes, wait. It's in here. Might have to reboot, Brandon, or yeah, I think it shut down. Didn't even give me a notice. Want to take a couple-minute recess, Brandon?
I mean, we can, or make obligatory jokes about how
Just
long
say-
your presentation was. And
Stare at me.
does the board want to take a quick recess while he gets reset up, or do we want to just sit and
Stare at me.
play the Jeopardy song? We'll hang out.
Hopefully it stays going here. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So this is the number of districts by year, and I didn't include them all because of the extent of the list, right? But this gives you a sense of the districts that have done this. And so what I wanted to show you, and this is in your packet, so feel free to, if you could, turn to the Rice Lake example here to the bottom. And these I tried to make these tables as straightforward as possible. I know they're not that easy to read, but if you stay with me and you follow along, I think you can get there. Okay. And I think our committee meeting in June, we spent a number of time just on this example, and then we replicate it. So we're going to show Rice Lake and then show other examples of how this worked, because I think it's important to see what they had done is kind of what we're proposing on a different level. Okay. So what I want to show you, here's the Rice Lake School District from 2014 to 2017-18. And I think it's important to see over a 3 or 4 year span, because these things, when you under levy, there's almost like a 3-year lag. There's like a 3-year lag where things happen at different times. So let's first focus on 2014-15. What I want you to look at here is the first column, the base revenue per member. You can see in 14-15 that Rice Lake had a base revenue per member of $98.24. They received a $75 increase that brought them to $98.99. Okay. In that year, they under levied by 19,000. That 19,000 did not produce a carryover the next year. So if you then go, well, they had $19,000 under levy. Look at the next year, go to 15-16 and look at prior year carry, you're going to see zero. Okay. What that tells me is that 19,000 did not exceed their non-recurring exemptions. Okay. Important, but not important to the whole story. But this shows you the pattern. Their tax levy that year was 14.3 million and their mill rate was 10.26. Okay. The next year, 15-16, Rice Lake had a per pupil of $98.70. They got a $0 increase from the state that year. And they had, so their total maximum revenue per member was $98.70. In that year, you can see that their revenue limit authority was $22,700,000 roughly. They received $9.2 million in aid for an allowable revenue limit levy of $13 million. Their tax levy, however, was only $8. So where's the difference? Well, they under levied by $5.3 million. Okay. They offset that under levy by increasing their Fund 80 and Fund 39. We didn't break them apart for simplicity's sake. They offset that by increasing their other two funds by $7 million. They actually increased taxes. We're not proposing that, but they did. Okay. They went up by about $1 million. That $5.3 million under levy, if you look there, you can see it's 19,000, then it goes to 5.3, then it goes to 0. Okay. That 5.3 in 15-16 produces a $4.8 million carryover, which meant that how do you get from 5.3 to 4.8? It meant their non-recurring exemptions were about $500,000. You subtract the under levy from the carryover, or from the non-recurring exemption, it got into 4.8 million. So what I want to show you is by them under levying by that amount, it actually brought their per pupil. Now go to 16-17, very top. It brought their per pupil to $77.37. The low revenue ceiling in that year was $9,100. So the state said, okay, well, you can't operate on a per pupil by less than the low revenue. It's a state guarantee. So the state auto brings them up to $9,100. That's the $1,363. Okay. And then on top of that, they're produced this recurring carryover of 4.8 million. So now I want you to look at the revenue limit authority line. It goes from 23 down to 22 million. You go, well, how'd they go down? Well, it's because their membership went down the second year. The following year, that jumps up to 25 million because that carryover is on top of the additional authority the state required them to have. So that shows you how that increased authority can happen from an under levy. Now, you might ask, well, how did they operate that year? By accepting 5.3 million less. They could have had an operating loan or they could have used fund balance. I don't know the answer to that offhand. And you can see here what's interesting is that While their levy went up, their mill rate stayed the same. So mill rates could be unimportant to some people, but their value likely stayed pace with the increase in the tax levy. And then the following year, that 4.8 million jumps into your per pupil. So look at the first column, the first row over 4 years. 14, 15, 98, 24, all the way to the last year at 11,267 at a time where the state funded schools essentially at zero. So it shows a short-term view of how school districts can significantly, in the right circumstances, can increase their per pupil through this strategy. So I'll kind of click through. You can kind of see some of the highlights I showed here. 9870 to 9100, that's the low revenue. That's an important amount because if you are under levying below that amount, that additional authority is awarded to you. This is the carryover that turns into, or the under levy turning into the carryover. Here is the revenue limit authority over 3 years, the increase. Okay, Wisconsin Rapids. I won't go through this one as detailed, but it's a similar story. Wisconsin Rapids from 2010-11 to 2013-14. Same story here. So Wisconsin Rapids in 2010-11 had a membership per max revenue per member of 9,500. This is when Act 10 happened. You can see in 2011-12, they had a subtraction of $527 through Act 10, okay? That brought them down to $9,063. In that same year, Wisconsin Rapids decided to under levy by 6.7 million. Okay. This is what I was talking about earlier. School districts likely did this intentionally to offset this. That 6.7 million produced a 5.7 roughly $1 million carryover. Okay. That dropped them down to $8,000 per kid, which meant the state had to bring them up $980 to get to low revenue at $9,000. So that $9,000, that $979 actually offset the $527 they lost the year before. On top of that, they got the $5.7 million additional authority. Hence, look at 2010. Their revenue limit authority was $54.7 million. And 2 years later, they're right back to $54.2 million. Essentially, they're back to even. The following year, that carryover jumps into their per pupil. They're actually back at the same place. So this seems to be, without obviously having the qualitative conversation with the school, this seems to be an intentional strategy used, okay? Altoona, very similar story, going back to 2011, 2012 to 14, 15. You can see here in 11, 12, they lost $528 per kid through Act 10. The next year, their per pupil jumps way down because of Act 10, obviously, 9,096. That same year, they under levied by 1.8 million. That 1.8 million was almost within $3,000 the same as their carryover, meaning Altoona likely has very little non-recurring exemptions. Important to notice this, okay? That under levy brought them well below low revenue, which was 9,100. They got an additional $1,100 per kid, plus the authority of the carryover, bringing their per pupil over 4 years up about $700 per student. So similar story. I'm just trying to show that this is a pattern. In these examples, unfortunately, you can see the tax levy here is increasing throughout the whole time. That's not certainly, this is what I mean before, is that this can impact districts in different ways. It's why it's important to look at the whole picture, okay? That obviously to Altoona, like maybe that wasn't as important to them at the time. To us, certainly that is not the case. So here's a table that shows different examples beyond just the three I just gave you. So Altoona's on here. Barron did this in 11, 12. Cadott Community did this twice. Hortonville's done this. Hudson's done this. Kaukauna, Rice Lake, Wapaka. But the one thing I want to show is we tried to expand not just the year, the under levy amount, the carryover. I want to talk about how much additional authority did the districts get. So let's spend a minute on this table. The Altoona got an increase of their revenue limit authority by about 1.7 million. So their new revenue limit was 15 million. So that was about 10% for them, almost 11%. Barron got an increase that was about 10.5. Cadott did it twice and received the authority of almost over 20% both times. So the reason I put this on here is that while we're looking at larger numbers, obviously the entire revenue limit authority is 41 million roughly. That percentage of our actual authority is 8%. So certainly, I would argue, certainly in line with other districts. And the other point to make is that for us to get to the same exact place as some of these districts, our non-recurring exemptions are 15 million almost. For us to get to the same place as in Altoona, we're still talking 18, 19 million to even get there because of how the functions of the state law govern us. So I just point that out. I think it's important to know that. And I think the large numbers sometimes jump out, but when you level it across our actual authority, 8% is pretty consistent with what you're saying. It's actually on the lower end of this table. So school district specifics, I'll talk through this quickly. So what we're proposing, pending board feedback here, and a lot of conversation to come, but this is kind of the first public hearing on this, is what we're proposing is in 26-7, under levy by the full Fund 10 operating authority, utilize a Fund 38, which Mike in a second will talk about that, what that looks like, to essentially offset the lost revenue for the district in an operating bond. We would then take the Fund 10 portion and attribute it to Fund 39, which you saw some of the tables, which would then allow us to, one, balance the tax levy or lower it, and two, we'd be able to defease a large portion of our $70 million capital bond, which would significantly, one, strengthen the district's financial position, but two, more importantly, would save the community upwards of $15 million interest. I think it's a big deal for the community. In 27, what would happen then? In 27, 28, the state would adjust our revenue authority to 11,000, and then the difference of the under levy subtracted by the projected 15 million in non-recurring exemptions would create a carryover. That money would be on top of the low revenue ceiling, which would increase our total authority. And then 28, 29, that carryover would be amortized into our per pupil. That's kind of the long and short. It's the same example you just saw in those tables. And this is what our current projection looks like. You can see the Fund 10 portion at 40.3. If we under levied, it would look like this. Okay. All of the Fund 10 portion would be attributed to Fund 39. You would still have the 7.5 million in the Fund 80. And the reason we partnered with Shelley on these presentations is because we're projecting to show that both Shelley's projects through a bond could be done and accomplished while maintaining the tax levy or decreasing it over time. So both things, I believe, they're really connected here. So debt defeasance, this came up in the presentation, and maybe Mike, you could talk about kind of what is debt defeasance and how school districts use it.
So debt defeasance is similar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Debt defeasance is similar to prepaying debt, but since the call feature on the debt and the scheduled payments aren't current, meaning you can just send an extra check and that payment goes away, those dollars are deposited into an escrow account. And then that escrow account becomes legally responsible for the payment of those identified future payments, principal and interest. So once the district deposits money into this escrow account, it's considered an expense for aid purposes, which is good. And also legally, you've met your obligation for that debt payment, even though the bonds are still out there with the district's name on them until they're actually the payment date or the call date come up. So again, it's just a pre-funding of the debt versus paying off the debt. It's used widely. Some years we have well over 100 districts will do a defeasance to varying degrees, depending on, their aid situation, overall levy situation, what they're trying to accomplish. And it is viewed as a positive from the credit rating agencies as well as paying down debt when you do a defeasance.
Okay. And I think we have some history with this. I believe we defeased debt in 22, 23.
Yep.
So we have a history of doing this. And I think, as Mike mentioned, again, every school district is different. We are heavily aided. So by defeasing debt and creating more shared costs, that's certainly important to us because it'll increase our future state aid amount we're going to get. So it is very important, and I know we talk about this every year in May, when we look at end of year budget, it's very important that we look and we manage our shared costs to make sure that we're maximizing the amount of state aid we get to keep our community in a really good position, because we're certainly not in a position where we need to build fund balances, especially the Fund 10 portion. So this is a handout we gave you. This is the Fund 39 defeasance. I don't know, Mike, would you mind talking about this one too?
Yeah, so this just looks at the $70 million referendum approved levy the district has outstanding that was issued in January of 25 and the current payments. And then you can see that there was one maturity partially defeased, and then we're eliminating full maturities of 2034 through 2040. Depending on how far the dollars go. And so you'll see that in the after, you'll see that those payments, again, 2034 through 2040 are eliminated, and then a portion of the 33 payment is eliminated. And also the interest associated with that. Now, this is illustrations using $45 million, because when we're having these conversations, we don't know what those amounts are going to be, how much the district's going to be able to levy in terms of, because this is a component of your overall levy. And if the goal, one of the goals that was stated was to have a controlled, flat, maybe even slightly declining levy. So depending on how all the other factors come in terms of state aid and things, that would determine the final amount. But so this is just one illustration. And again, the 100% of the savings or reduction with this is taxpayer savings. The district cannot choose to reuse these dollars for any other purpose. So it is significant. And then, by reducing the future levies, which is the far right-hand column, the 1.8 down, and then it changes to 4.5 and goes to 6.7. Those are the reductions in those levies. And that's important because doing this whole process, would result in the district gaining new levy authority in Fund 10, and to have an offset to be able to access that. So again, that goal of not increasing overall levies is more obtainable.
And I think if you look at the bottom right corner, that shows it's almost 16 million at 45 million, just under $45 million of a defeasance. So certainly significant savings to the community on something that they were overwhelmingly supportive of in November 24. This is another similar kind of table that Mike put together for Shelley's projects. I don't know if any commentary.
Yeah, just a couple of things. 20 years is the maximum term of a bond issue for a school district in Wisconsin. So we ran it at that level. Ultimately, depending on the size of the projects for the district would choose to move forward with or not. The structure may change, the term may change, those types of things. This is just kind of looking, okay, if you went for 20 million, just as a starting point, there's no magic to that number. But the district would have the flexibility to adjust the length of the debt if it ended up being a smaller borrowing. And so you're not locked into 20 years, it's just the maximum. And then the other comment I want to make is this is a tax exempt borrowing because it's a more project-based, and the IRS allows school districts to borrow on a tax exempt basis. We're using a 5.25% interest rate, which when we ran this was about 1% above current rates, so pretty conservative. But we're about 75 basis points above current rates because over the last couple of weeks, rates have jumped up a bit. But again, they will fluctuate, and there's some, so we want to be conservative in terms of what you're looking at as far as payments, and then also how those payments are put into the forecasting forward for future levy obligations. That we're on the high side, so hopefully we'll deliver better news if and when the district would choose to do this.
And similar to the referendum capital bond we just showed, this is 20 years, and a state aid, if a budget cycle produces a high state aid, the board has the ability to levy more into 80 and defease that down too. So again, that just becomes another conversation every year that the board can have around what's the best place to manage the tax levy, to defease debt, to et cetera, et cetera. I think it's a consistent conversation here. And then the last one is a similar thing, and I'll let Mike finish up here with the step.
Yeah, so this borrowing these funds would go into Fund 10 to provide the funds that you were under levying in your operational budget. The 41 plus that was being discussed earlier. Again, this time we ran 45, probably think that's probably the maximum, but again, we don't have all the variables known at this point to be able to use a firm number. We ran it for 20 years again. You'll see that the interest rate is 6%. The IRS does not allow the district to borrow on a tax exempt basis for operational needs. And since these dollars would be funding your operational programs in Fund 10, that's operations, and so you'd have to use a taxable borrowing. Again, at the time, we thought we were about a full percent above current rate. So again, conservative assumption, but we're probably about 75% conservative at this point, just given the last 7 to 8 days of movement.
And real quick, Mike, so the difference between the recreation debt and the operating, can you talk about the state aid differences here with these two?
Well, both of these debts would be housed in Fund 80, which is your non-referendum. Excuse me, 38. I was a point ahead of myself. The dollars for the $20 million illustration would be levied in Fund 80 and transferred into 38. And so those dollars would not be aided. And because you're not aided on your Fund 80 expenditures, that's where the dollars are generated, and they're just moved to 38 to make the debt payment, so there's no aid on those dollars. The payments on the $45 million illustration would be aided. So the district would generate additional state aid for those expenditures. Again, to what level, over that time. We don't really have it forecast in here, but it is in terms of your overall projections of levies going over the near term. So that's a difference between the two funds. It's not uncommon for districts to do non-referendum borrowings in Fund 38 and levy into Fund 80 and transfer. Racine built an aquatic center. They closed their 3 high school pools, built an aquatic center using that same methodology. So it's something that's done not all the time, but on a regular basis, that it's a known practice and allowable. So.
And I think it's important because when we receive the 20 million for the rec projects, pending board support, obviously, it would not be considered a deductible receipt. And when we pay it, it wouldn't be considered a shared cost. So it's not like you're going to take it on one side and then get no benefit, right? So that's important. I think as we play the state aid picture, we've kind of baked this into the calculations as we move forward. So let's kind of pivot as we get near the end here. Let's look at the districts table. So we built a very similar, it's a little more expanded. We wanted to break out 39 from 80. It's a good example of a row we broke out. Let's look at what this would look like. We went over a 6-year period, pretty confident over the next 3 to 5, certainly. And then pending state biennial budgets, that's obviously going to have a factor into this. But given the last budget with real no increases stated, I think it's going to be a focal point of the state budget, regardless of who's in the Assembly, Senate, and the governor's chair. So let's look at this. So in 25-26, our base revenue per member, you can see in 25-6, we're at 11,438. And if you look down, we have a referendum that's going to be taking place and going into our per pupil. So there's that. Okay. So in 26-7, you can see our per pupil jumps up to 13,039. That's a reflection of our $5.8 million referendum that was passed for staff compensation. The first year it's an exemption recurring. The next year, just like carryover, the next year it goes into your per pupil. That's the reflection there. So if you focus on 26-7, what we're proposing is an under levy of the full Fund 10 portion, the 41 million. Okay. The increase, you can see the difference is then put down to Fund 39, $48 million in Fund 39. Shelley's levy for Fund 80 is 7.5. The tax levy decreases from 57.1 million to 56.2, almost $1 million decrease. When you couple that with an equalized property value increase of 5%, your mill rate's going to drop by almost 50 cents, roughly, okay? If you go to the following year, you can see that $41 million under levy is going to produce a $27 million carryover. The difference is about 15 million, roughly 15. That's our non-recurring exemption. That's the subtraction. That $41 million under levy brings us all the way down to $9,482 per pupil. That's a little over $1,500 below the low revenue ceiling. So that's your additional authority. So if you look at your revenue limit authority, kind of highlighting this, you can see here, you're going to go from 108 million this past year to 110. Then you're going to jump up to 120 from additional authority. And then the following year, you can see our per pupil goes from 11,438 to 12,7, all the way up to 14,876. When you add in the governor's 325 moratorium, you get down to 15,200. So that is a good example. That is exactly how it worked. Our district, it will work the same exact way here. Now let's look at our all funds tax levy, okay? So it's important to look here. I don't know if I have this highlighted or not. I do not. Okay. So let's stick right here then. So one thing I want to point out is when we defease a large portion of debt, we're going to get a large increase in state aid the following year. So what you'll see here is you'll see 48 million right here in 26-7. Then the next year, you're going to see 14 million more. That's us strategically. We're putting more money there to potentially defease. That's not reflected in the 39 analysis Mike just talked about. So that $15 million, almost 16 in savings, is just from the 1 year defeasance. Now we could strategically levy more than 39, which would reduce the term and increase the interest saved by the community. That's an option for next year for the board, because you're going to have a substantial amount of aid in the following year by defeasing 40 million. But my point is, by defeasing more of it in 7-8, you're going to keep allowing us, if you keep look at the tax levy, 57, 56, 55, 55, 55. By continuing to do that, you're continuing to get more aid to be able to supplement kind of our goal, right? And I don't know, Mike or Todd, can you talk about what estimates are in here for state aid? Kind of how we did that?
Yep. So as Aaron mentioned earlier, it could be difficult when you're going into a new state budget, which will be next year, because you don't know what the state's going to do. Historically, the state, when there's been increase in revenue limit authority, the state has put in equalization aid to offset that. The current biennial budget we're in, the state did not. So you don't know what they're going to do, so you make assumptions. So when Aaron and I talked about it, and Mike, it's, I would say, on the average to conservative estimates, if the state continues to put zero money in, it might be a little bit aggressive, but if the state puts in something, as there's talk, and there was the budget repair bill had talked about putting money into, so it's reasonable to think that there will be in the next couple state budgets, then there's probably even a little bit on the conservative side. So, built on assumptions we don't know yet, but certainly not over aggressive on the equalization aid side.
And I think the flexibility that we do have is that if you look at 27, 28, for example, and you said, let's say the state says we're putting zero in again. Okay. Well, currently our budget in 27, 28 to get to almost a $500,000 decrease in levy includes 14 million and 39. So there's flexibility there to not defease that money. Potentially if the state decides they're not going to add more money so there's some flexibility built in here. I'd be shocked if that happened. I would be, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
From you guys, I mean, I can't recall back-to-back state budgets where zero has been added to state aid ever.
And just to add that in 27, 28, if you were in a position that maybe it's not 14 in Fund 39, but even, 5 or 6 million additional beyond your payment, you could target those funds. So if you had a better idea what the state budget was going to be like the next year, or had a sense of what the near term, you could focus those dollars to offset those levies more near term and not necessarily look at the longer term. You could even do that with this initial defeasance. If you wanted to give yourself more flexibility in the early years, it reduces the savings because there's no savings for defeasing non-callable debt.
Mm-hmm.
But you could still target some of those dollars to make sure you gave yourself enough levy flexibility if that was something that you would desire.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be, I mean, again, we don't know for sure, but I think most are expecting there to be money in the equalization aid allocation, increase that. And if there's not, as you mentioned, there's, I think there's flexibilities went through in the forecast that if that happens, then you don't levy that much more additional in 27, 28. I think it's important. I think you may know this already, but you're, as I mentioned, you're positively aided. So the state gives you every dollar you spend at about 25%. So for every dollar you spend, whether on the debt side or operational, the state's giving you back about 25 cents on that dollar, which is not the case for everybody. And again, why Aaron mentioned that, for your district, the strategy makes some sense.
And I think you did see the legislators attempt to provide more tax relief with the bill that didn't quite get across the finish line. And so I do think there's a sentiment in Madison that because some districts were hit pretty hard by not having an increase in those $8, and there was some backlash with that. So I do think there's a feeling of a need to keep pace or do something in that area.
I agree. I think we're projecting a decrease. I think we're in a minority for the state next year of school districts to see that. Now, if they decide to take the full authority, that's up to each school board alike, but that's kind of what we're seeing at least. So the variables, we've hit on these things. We don't really know what our transfer of service is going to be yet. We project about $1 million. That's going to be up until probably mid-August here as transfers come in. So we'll see what that looks like. I think Todd and Mike both referenced, we won't really know some of these other variables until about October. So that includes our declining enrollment. That's going to be membership in September. Have a better idea then. Certified again in October. Energy efficiency, uncounted pupils. I already know that. Vouchers is going to be the biggest one. So as that number increases, that's going to increase our expenses, also increase our levy, which will increase the amount we could under levy, but also it's not going to really change your carryover. So it's going to have a negative impact on this plan, not to the extent of not making it financially prudent, but certainly a conversation will occur about what are the new numbers? What did vouchers do? I mean, it's honestly a real talking point. And then state aid is going to be one of the bigger ones along with third party pupil count. So the additional, we're calling it 7.3 million. We tried to take out the 325 that the governor would give us as we need natural increases. That really should come out of the authority. So if you call it the actual increase, which is around 9 million, 10 million, minus the 325, you get to about 7.5 roughly. So kind of where does that go? What is a starting point? Certainly tons of conversation would have to go into it, but this is really not for this year, it'd be for the 27, 28 year. So number one, you're going to have an operating debt payment that Mike just discussed around 3.8 million. One of the recommendations potentially from the finance committee is around, as you guys have heard through the teacher compensation model, is kind of catch up staff who have been here. So some of our staff are placed at step 15 and maybe have 18 years of experience, trying to maybe not catch everyone up, but make a concerted effort to go, everyone's moving one, but if you're 10 steps behind, you're going to move 1 + 2. If you're 5 to 10, you're going to move 1 + 1. Things like that, I think would go a long way. I think that would be something to consider. I think another thing is dedicating some funds to facilities. I think it's important that whatever we do, not all of the funds that the board considers are recurring expenses. So I think that alone just gives the board flexibility to go, we're not on the hook for $7 million of expenses when you want to have flexibility in conversations. Certainly our facilities could use the money. So these are just a list of things that we've discussed, but again, this is really a year, almost 2 years out. So what does a quick timeline look like? I've kind of left some dates in so you can see kind of the previous work. So we had our committee meeting in June. We're meeting tonight. August 10th, pending questions and formal support. We already had a call with Krols and Brady around what kind of logistics would be required from the board to get into resolutions to authorize borrowing. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but that would happen on August 10th. That would be the board saying, yes, we can enter into the resolutions. That does not mean the board has entered into borrowing. That just means that you're kind of starting the process. By no means does that hook the board into having to do it. Just gives you the ability to do it prior to the October tax levy. We're I had a phone call today with Mike Brendel at the School Financial Services. So certainly that's an ongoing conversation. We're discussing today the operating loan around whether that can be booked to a source 873. So I told Mike to call him tomorrow and have a follow-up with that. That's important because as we talked about, that would not be considered a deductible receipt if it's in source 873 for operating purposes. So that's kind of ongoing. And then really just talking to DPI, I've had one conversation. I'll have another one with them to make sure that, hey, this is what we're planning to do. Any questions, making sure they're in the loop, that's important. Then we have some standard things, annual hearing, and then pending the resolutions, we would have a bond rating call potentially, start that process. End of October would be the final approval of the tax levy. November is when you certify. And then we would potentially, if the board wanted to move forward with these bonds, we would approve a parameters resolution, similar to what we did with Mike 2 years ago almost, which would allow Baird to kind of sell the bonds at a premier time for the school district. And then potentially bond issuance. So I don't know if that schedule looks good to you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. If, I usually talk loud enough, I don't need a mic, but, so obviously if the district chooses to under levy in October, you have bills to pay, so the borrowing, the operational borrowing, the illustration of the 45 million would have to take place. So once you make the decision of under levying of 41 to 45 million, whatever that number is, you've essentially committed to moving forward with that borrowing. The 20 million is a separate, maybe a separate conversation, but because you need to replace those dollars that you're under levying somehow, and it'll be done through a borrowing. So just to make that clear.
And the only other thing I want to mention, and feel free to jump in and fill the void on this, is for bond authority in the state of Wisconsin, when the board approves a resolution to do Fund 38 borrowing, there's what's called a petition process. So the board approves the resolution, we post this in our district newspaper. There's a 30-day window, or the community members can essentially petition against that if they want to. Okay, I don't know how common that is, but it happens. And so if it were to receive enough signatures, I think it's 7,500, then the board would have to decide if it wants to go on the ballot or not. That's just kind of a thing that happens in the state. So that's why we picked August 10th, because then by mid-September, the board would have all the information about, was it petitioned? It wasn't, or it was. Okay, then there's conversations that happen. So I don't know if there's.
Yeah. Just if you would be petitioned, then this option goes away. Because you couldn't under levy, because you wouldn't have the ability to borrow to replace those dollars you under levied. But that's why the importance of the August date is so that, as Aaron mentioned, you know the answer to that. And if you're not, then you have the authority. That authority is good for 5 years. And one other thing, the resolutions may have a not to exceed number, again, because we don't have all the numbers in place to determine exactly what that amount would be. It would be kind of a not to exceed. You don't have to borrow any. No, you'd have some problems if you didn't, if you under levied. But that amount, you could borrow just what you need, not up to the maximum.
So I think with that, we'll turn it back to you, President Burns, for questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. Becker?
Thanks. I'll jump in. Appreciate the level of detail. I'm getting there with the understanding myself. So kind of in the same vein of what you were talking about with this, like what gives us the bond authority? I can't help but start to think about the public angle and how do we explain this to the lay citizen. And going back to the why section, like I think it's like slide 39. I just wonder if we might at some point put a citation in there, like maybe like each bullet there. So just for that one, the Fund 10 operating levy authority. Where in the statute exactly can we say chapter and verse, just so people don't come in and say, how is this possible? What's the catch? something that just offers another layer of transparency, like just one click down. Because I trust you guys. I trust our finance department. I trust we're not doing anything that's not going to pass an audit or pass state inspection. But I just wonder if we can give people just a little bit more insight into the process, into the finance process on the state end. Like as far as like all the defeasance pieces, that seems like to the point that it's a little more common practice. But since we just took out an awful lot of money and putting a whole lot more money in debt, I think we need to be just a little bit more explicit. Not much of a question, just like I guess it's a lot of money.
Yes. Okay. Anything else? No. Okay. Other questions from the board? Mr. Talani.
Aaron, could you go to the estimate slide towards the end?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to your point about if the state does not put any aid into to get us from that 9,400 or 9,500 to 11,000, what happens in that case?
So you're talking in 27, 8,
Yeah.
8, 9 here?
Yeah. So if they don't put any monies into the fund, equalization fund, is that what you call it? Is that what that is? Okay. So if there's no monies to make up for that 1,518.
So that's our per pupil. So the aid line is right here. It's the 85 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if the state, I don't know how much of an increase we baked in, Todd, but if the state put zero in, that 85 million would be less. It wouldn't impact our per pupil though. That would be,
Okay.
that's essentially set.
So if that number is less, then
Let's say it was 80. It was at 80 versus 85. Then this
Mhm.
14 million would be, we'd move it down to 9. And that way our tax levy would stay the same.
okay.
Yeah, it's a good question. And we're hopeful for all schools that doesn't happen. But if it
Mhm.
does, that was kind of the point we were trying to make, is that there's still cushion in here
Mhm.
to compound a situation like that. Now, what would that look like in 28, 29? That's hard to know, but yeah.
And obviously things usually don't go down, they go up. So we've gone from for revenue or minimum of the revenue per member. So it was 9,100, 9,400 that you showed in examples, and now it's 11,000.
Yep.
What if that number was to go down? That's kind of where I was going with my previous question too. So what if could the state bring that number down? And then if so, what does that affect?
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it would go down. And it's never gone down before. I think the one piece is, kind of the nuance of the formula that allows you that additional revenue. It's part of the revenue limit formula now. And, Aaron shared examples of districts that have used this strategy before. We've talked, we've said that, could they potentially change that? And instead of bumping up to the low revenue ceiling, you stay at that 9,482. I think there's the chance that that could happen. And that's why Aaron has had having the conversations with the DPI. There's no talk of it changing. It's been part of the formula for many years, and districts have taken advantage of it. So, but
if
could they
that
potentially-
happens, where do we adjust then?
Then basically you would basically get back to, you'd lose the under levy of the 41 million, you'd have your borrowing, and then you'd have the expenditure of the borrowing. That would be kind of the worst case, is you'd not get that additional authority going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be like a monumental shift in state law.
Yeah.
It would be similar to like Act 10 happening. It would be essentially districts couldn't under levy at all anymore. That's what would happen.
So the only time the revenue limit per member went down was Act 10. And that was at a time where there was also a shift on the employee retirement system. And so there was a reduction in expenditures at the same time. And so I don't think without some sort of legislative expenditure reduction the state would ever reduce where districts are currently at. And actually, there's, various attempts, whether it be special ed aid or different things, to provide more resources to school districts. And again, with this, you have the flexibility of the dollars that go into Fund 39. Obviously, you have to levy a minimum amount to make your upcoming calendar year debt payments. But also, even though you have the extra authority that you've generated by doing this, you're under no obligation to use it. You're not required to levy those additional dollars if it doesn't meet your other goals, one of which is including, maintaining a stable levy.
And the other piece of that, Aaron and I have talked about this as well, is the 11,000 is the current low revenue ceiling. If the board went ahead with this strategy and you go into the 27, 28, if the new biennial budget produced a higher low revenue ceiling, which, the state has done previously, not every big budget, then, there could be a additional gain, then it would jump up past that 11,000 as well.
Yeah, we ran that and our revenue limit at 120 goes to 128 because we're below it. So they're bringing you up to 2,500. The other point to your point, Ms. Chai, is that if that were to happen, I mean, we would have already done this. So any state law change moving forward, I'm not like a legal expert with the state law, but we're already in the process. We already would have a carryover line for 27.8. So they might say moving forward, districts that do this I'm just speaking in person how I feel about it, but I mean, that's likely what would happen. So
Because my main concern is about timing. So with you mentioning that, in fact, it's more important to do it now, pre the new legislature and governor. Because what I'm afraid of is we get a new legislature and or governor, and who knows what happens, and then that puts us in a bad situation. But hopefully, as we say, everything goes up. So hopefully that 11,000 will be 11,400 or 500. And that helps us additionally.
And there's just layers to just this question. And I think it's a great question. But like, here's an example. I think Todd mentioned either tonight or at a different place, like 40+% of school districts are at low revenue. So if any of those districts under levy by even a couple, $50 a kid, it's likely producing a carryover. If the state says that carryover doesn't go to the per pupil, then what happens? The carryover stays as a recurring exemption forever? Like, there's layers to this problem that they create. Now, we're just an example that we're above it. So like, it works for you, but what about for 40% of the district? There's just problems with it. It's not an easy fix, I don't think. You know what I mean? But I think it's a good conversation. So.
Any other questions? Statements? Mr. Lee?
I think just a statement. I've been in the weeds on this for a while, and so I have a little bit of a broader, I guess, understanding of kind of how this works, which is it is very complicated. But I think the biggest pieces that we need to take from this, in my opinion, is that number one, this strategy would generate a $15 million or so savings for taxpayers on interest from our current debt. So yes, we are taking on more debt, but we're also using that to pay off current debt. And so it's that strategy that allows us to save that interest, which is, again, outside our revenue limit. So that goes directly back to taxpayers as far as a reduction in the amount of taxes that they would have to pay. That's number one. Number two, it can allow us to provide two very unique community amenities, things that we, in one instance, have no examples of in our community, which is the warm pool and the walking pool, and taking another amenity, which is a large track space and outside, entertainment venue that we'd be able to add to our community, which the closest one is going to be at the WAC. And as far as outside entertainment, I don't know if there is one in our community right now. I don't know if any of our parks house any of that. Might be wrong, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Maybe Veterans Park, they kind of have something there by the police station there in 70th. So I think that that's something we can pay for without raising taxes, right? Without having an increase in the mill rate, not only that, but having a reduction in the mill rate still. It provides the district flexibility in our budgets moving forward. So if we have crazies up in Madison doing crazy things, which sometimes happens, that we can level that out for our community. We're not seeing big increases, big decreases, big increases, big decreases. We can utilize our revenue authority in an efficient way to ensure that we can keep that level. Our community can say, well, I know what the school district levy is going to be this year because it's the same as it was last year, within $50. And I think that is something that our community has not been able to see for a long time because of all the changes that we've seen at the state level. So although it is complicated, it is a complex thing that we're talking about here. It is not unique. It's not unique to districts in our state, and it's been happening for a very, very long time. I see this as us utilizing the rules that are already in place to benefit our community. And I think that's something that we have not been in a position to do previously. And now we are because of decisions that we and others have made over the course of the last 10 years. And I think that has allowed us to talk about these things and look at what we could provide for our community and for our students and our staff. And that is having some concrete knowns in our budget every single year and being like, well, we're not exactly sure what's going to happen, but we know whatever comes our way, we have the ability to manage it and ensure that we're managing in a way that's going to be beneficial for our students, our staff, and our taxpayers, that they're not getting overly burdened by what's happening in Madison. So that's why I think I'm very much in favor of this strategy. And I think that although different than what we've been done in the past, we take our opportunities where we see them and we're smart with them. And I think that we'll be able to provide some wonderful outcomes for everyone involved. So thank you for all the effort that you guys have put into this, because I know it's a lot. And just going down the rabbit hole of how school finance works and how can you do this and it be legal, and how can you do this and this be not where you're going to lose $40 million out of your levy forever, is something that is really hard to grasp. But we're doing all the work necessary to ensure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's, that if we pull the trigger on this, this is something that we're going to not regret doing. And in fact, I think if we wait, we'll regret that we waited. Because I do think that regardless of who's the governor and regardless of the legislature, look, that 11,000 is going to go up. I think it will go up. And so that would even compound more the benefits that we're going to see as a district if we do this.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thank you for all the information. We'll then see you again for this one, the August 10th.
August 10th. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Yep. Thank you. And with that, that is the end of our workshop and the end of our meeting agenda. So if there is no further business and there is no objection, the meeting will be adjourned. There being no objection, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.